Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another great session of MSP Initiative's online series. We have Phil Wegner with us here from Techgrid, and we're going to talk a whole lot about where he started and what he's doing now. I can't wait to hear some of the cool stuff that I don't get just from reading all the cool things that are going on. But first, we're going to start out with a little housekeeping. So I'm going to just share my screen here, and again, I'm filling in for George. There is no replacement for George Bardisi, but I'm going to do my best here. My best rendition of George Bardisi. How's that? And of course, when I do this, it goes across 17 screens in my office. So I got it. So here we have some initiatives MSPI is doing. I think this is really huge in the space. MSP Community Minds, something I worked very closely with George on with. The next one coming up is September 25th and 26th in Denver. These events are specifically for the MSPs in the community, and the vendors come out and only talk thought leadership and really kind of add that this is all educational for MSPs. This is the event that if you're an MSP, you've been looking for instead of getting pitched at by hundreds of vendors when you go to an event. This one is not that. So make sure you try to make it out there. It's free for you. And if you know anything about George and the MSPI team, they do it right. They take care of people. There's a lot of cool things to do at night on top of the education during the day. So this is just one of the things that they're doing. And then on top of that, they also have something going on with the website, Jen. I don't know if you know that, but you can't switch between the block parties and the community mind stuff. They also have block parties, a lot of block parties. Yeah, it's not show. Let me do it. I'll do it down here. Let's see if that works. So the block parties are events that they do, parties that they do at other events, and they have a lot of these, and they're always a great time. I've been to many of them. They're super cool, exciting. Next one coming up, somehow, some way, they pulled off PAX 8 Beyond block party. So if you're out at PAX 8 Beyond and you want to be a part of this, make sure you register and take a look at it. It's free to you as an MSP. And if you're a vendor and you haven't sponsored yet, you probably want to talk to the team at MSPI to be able to sponsor these events as well. They're fantastic. So they have PAX 8 Beyond, Kaseya DataCon in Europe, ConnectWise IT Nation in Australia, Kaseya DataCon coming up in Miami in October, DataCon Asia Pacific, ConnectWise IT Nation at the end of the year, November 2024. That is usually the biggest party of the year. Make sure you get out to these. Just some really cool things that MSPI has been doing. And if you don't know anything about MSPI, make sure you reach out to the team and find out more about what they're doing, why they're doing it. It's all about the community. And then again, there's these, which are recorded, and you can check back and view these things anytime you want. So if you miss it today, come back and check out what Phil had to say, because I'm sure it's going to be a really cool session. So Phil, without further ado, let's chat a little bit about you and your history, because I find it interesting. I know we all have these crazy journeys through this weaving in and out, but I always feel like the folks that had done the MSP thing in the past have a little bit more of an interesting flavor when they get into the vendor side of things. So
Sure. Yeah.
Phil, I'd love to hear more about, let's talk about where you started, all of
Yeah.
that, your humble beginnings, and then get to where you're at now at Techgrid.
Yeah. So I don't know how far back you want to go, but actually I'm the son of a Baptist minister. So I grew up in Virginia, and I'm one of those PKs that probably your parents probably warned you about. The preacher's kids are usually the ones that are the wildest kids. So I grew up in Virginia, but I went to school at Liberty, and then my first job out of college, I moved to Charlotte, which is where I am now. And I started in technology when really I got out of college. And so my career, actually, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile as well, and we have a lot of similarities. Like I worked in telecom for a little bit. I worked for data center startups and things like that, and then I ended up starting my own company, which was Secure Edge back in 2006. And that story is probably what we'll talk a little bit more about, but very wide ranging, very similar to your background.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, and obviously it's everything that you do in life that kind of pours into this job, right? Because
Right,
I
right.
feel like I feel the same way. Like I had a very crazy childhood growing up and did all these things, but I wouldn't change anything for the world, because I really think that that's kind of turned me into the business person that I am now. So love that you went that far back and gave us a quick synopsis of that. Let's talk a little bit about Secure Edge and how that led
Yeah.
to TechGrid.
Well, so Secure Edge, we started that back in 2006, or I started back in 2006, and we were doing large scale networking. I don't even remember back that far, but at the time, Wi-Fi networks were innovative.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
yeah,
And they were also scary because people were worried about, oh, I'm broadcasting a signal outside of a building, and so we thought that was a great opportunity. So I called the company Secure Edge because we were going into building out these big infrastructures, and we were going into colleges, airports, like we did the Vegas airport. We did a lot of medical centers. And we would design these systems that were fully integrated with Wi-Fi access control, which was innovative as well at the time. And we were plugging all these things together, and that's where we came up with the name, Secure Edge. And we were doing these large-scale network infrastructures. And of course, we were at the time pretty much a VAR business, mostly kind of project-based. And we realized after doing that business for a few years that, hey, it'd be great if we supported it after we installed it.
right,
And our customers were like, we would go back to see a customer and they had never updated the operating system. They had never changed anything. So we're like, okay, well, maybe we should be offering managed services with this. And so we evolved that into doing a lot more managed services. And that's kind of how we scaled the company. So we were selling HPE and Fortinet and Palo Alto, a lot of the vendors that I know a lot of other people tend to sell. We were platinum partners with HPE. So we were on the advisory council and all that kind of stuff. But at that time, what happened, if you remember back this far as well, AWS started. AWS was coming on the scene, and AWS was an innovative model for how they were delivering cloud. And I got like really fascinated with AWS. And I was thinking, how could we take a network and then deliver it in a similar way that AWS delivers cloud? I know it's consumption-based models. Obviously, cloud is like true consumption, usage-based, more like water, at your
right,
house. But like networks, I thought, could we convert this whole thing into a subscription model? And then could we sell this to our customers entirely online? So what I really want to do is build the AWS of networking. And so what we did is we took our tech stack that we were using, and at the time it was, Salesforce CRM, ConnectWise PSA, in all these different software tools. And like, all we have to do is build this customer interface, and we can figure out a way to sell, networks to this customer interface. And of course, that didn't work because we couldn't get anything to work on top of the industry software. And so
right,
I spent probably 2 or 3 years and just several $100,000 just trying to build on top of like existing industry tools. And finally, after a few years of it, I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to build on top of the existing stack. So I ended up buying a software company in 2019, and I started building what I thought should exist. And that's really the basis of what's Techgrid is today, in a short form.
nice. It's always interesting that we beat ourselves up. And then that's how something good comes out of all the things that we beat ourselves up about, right? Why won't this work? Oh, wait a minute, they're not my tools. These aren't my things. And
Wait, yeah, it's fun. I think a lot of people think about entrepreneurship and they're like, it takes like this visionary founder that's really brilliant. And maybe that's true. Like maybe there's those guys out there like Elon, and they're just brilliant people. For
right,
me, I feel like it was just a series of banging my head against the wall and then finding another way. So it was more like a game of Pac-Man where I ran as hard as I could and I ran into a wall and then went the other direction.
right,
And that's kind of how we ended up with software because we ended up building this platform, and we had only built it for ourselves. So I had invested millions of dollars and we built this, thing for ourselves. And I had some of our partners like HPE and Ingram Micro and Wells Fargo and all these companies that we worked with. And I showed it to them and they're like, if you made that thing available for other people in the industry, like other MSPs and VARs, like they all need that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I heard that like 7 times within like a period of 2 months. And then I
yeah,
showed it to like other, companies, like because I was on the advisory council, whatever. So I showed it to my peers, like people that I've known for 10 years and knew really well. These other CEOs of other companies that, I was drinking beer with, maybe at your block parties, we were hanging out together. And they all said, "Hey, could we license your software? If you made it available to us, we would license it." And that was when I was like, "Oh, I've actually created something other than an MSP." And so I ended up packaging up the MSP, selling it off a couple years ago. And then what we've been doing for the last 2 years is we've been in stealth mode, building Techgrid. And it was the platform that we created, but we kind of turned it around and made it available for the rest of the industry.
Nice. So for people watching, obviously you get this journey of again, I'm with you. I'm not the visionary guy. I'm the one who bangs my head off the wall until I feel like, hey, that hurts. I got to turn. I got to change direction, right?
Right.
I did that all through my MSP career, and just I
Yeah.
learned by making mistakes, right? And I learned, okay, I got to stop making these same mistakes and turn this a different direction, and kept going and going. From a standpoint of the people watching this, what does Techgrid do, and who do you
Yeah.
serve?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think just a couple of things I'll get into that. But what I think is so interesting just about like kind of the world today is that you and I, if you think about how we operate during the day, is we operate on different platforms. Now, platforms are an overused term, and it's kind of annoying to hear everybody call their stuff a platform. But when you talk about a platform, I'm thinking about, you go to Amazon and buy your stuff, and it gets shipped to your house. And sometimes it's Amazon, sometimes it's a third party. When you're booking your table reservations for you and your wife or your partner or whatever, you're booking that in OpenTable. And OpenTable is a multi-sided platform, whatever. And one of the things I thought was so funny about the world is that we've been building networks all these years that have been supporting all these platforms, but there is no platform in the IT industry that's like the major platform outside of cloud and things like that. There's no platform that delivers technology to businesses inside buildings. And what I believe is similar to the mission that you guys have is that the MSPs and the VARs of the world are the ones that are supporting the technology infrastructure that's running businesses. And the businesses are the economic engine that powers prosperity and literally our country. Like literally, like if you take the small businesses and the businesses away, like there's no GDP, there's no, we can't take care of our families and all that. So we have a really important job as VARs and MSPs to support businesses. But if you look at the infrastructure that we are running our companies on as VARs and MSPs, it's completely fragmented and broken. And so what we set out to do with our own, when I had one, is I set out to connect all the things I'm using together into one essentially digital system. And one of the things I thought was funny, and our major investor now is actually the founder of ConnectWise, so I can talk openly about. I don't disparage it. I just talk openly about my experience. But one of the things I thought was so funny when we were using ConnectWise as an example is it was really hard to connect things to it. And I always joke that why is it called ConnectWise? Like that's just a funny name for a company that's really hard for me to connect things to it. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to build this framework where you literally connect anything to it. So if you think about other industries, and I'm talking about e-commerce as an example, the major player in e-commerce outside of Amazon is Shopify. And I don't know if you're very familiar with Shopify.
Yep.
But Shopify's story was the founder of Shopify was trying to sell things online, realized it was extremely difficult to do that. And so he went out and started putting together these tools that became Shopify. And then he started offering that to everybody else who wanted to create a store. So that was essentially an e-commerce kind of framework with all these things built into it. And if you look at Shopify today, it's really awesome. 10% of the world of e-commerce flows through Shopify, I believe. Maybe it's just in the US, but it's really, really big. There's 10,000 apps that you can literally just plug into it and they just automatically work inside the Shopify kind of framework. And I thought, well, that doesn't exist in our industry. There's nothing like that. And matter of fact, if you look at what is in our industry, it's primarily PSA software, which is very necessary, RMM and all these other great tools. But what connects all that together? I mean, a lot of those types of things, when you're like, hey, I want to accept the payment online, that's like a third party add-on. I'm like,
Right.
shouldn't that be a core feature to just press a button to let my customers pay me? Like, should that be different from my system? And so what we envisioned is a brand new transaction framework. So what we describe for TSPs, and so to answer your question in less than 5 minutes, sorry about that. Is that what we built for MSPs and VARs is we built a business operating system, and we built it to tie all these fragmented tools together. And then we built digital workflows so that you can sell, fulfill, and manage all the commerce functionality entirely online. Maybe I should have started with the short answer and then gotten into all the
No,
detail.
no, no, that's perfect. I mean, that's what you want to be able to better understand where you're going with it. And so how does it work? So I'm an
Yeah,
MSP.
yeah,
I have, your typical PSA, RMM.
yep,
I have,
right,
probably too many tools in my stack as it
yep,
is. And then and I'm conscious of my cost,
yeah,
right? Because I'm
yeah.
thinking about that all the time. What does your solution do when I come to you and say, "Hey, Phil, I need help. They don't
Yeah.
work well together, but I also have to be cost conscious because of all the
Yeah.
costs that I'm spending on my tools."
Well, a couple funny things on that. Back when we were running our business, and we kind of centered our world around PSA software, and for equal you know feedback on platforms, like we used Autotask and Datto for a long time. Then we used ConnectWise, and we had kind of the same problems with both kind of these traditional PSA software systems. We ended up paying more money in software and development trying to connect things to it than we did the actual apps themselves.
Yeah,
And so it was like, man, this is crazy. Just because then the funny thing about that is obviously we're in IT. So like, shouldn't we be the industry where everything just plugs and plays? But it doesn't work that way. But I have kind of a core belief because you triggered me on like costs. Okay. I have a core belief on costs, because I ran a company just like you did or for many years. And when I started looking at, well, why, what are the major costs in my company? And when we started looking at things like sales operations costs, like how long it takes us to generate a quote, how long does it take us to do like basic things? Hey, my customer wants a quote and it's taking me 2 weeks to turn around. Why does that take 2 weeks to turn it around? Like what's the problem? And the
right,
customers are doing the same thing. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? I know in a 2 hour window, like when my toilet paper is going to arrive at my house, and I'm asking you for a quote, and you can't even give it to me. I can go online and I can buy a pizza, and I get better tracking on my pizza than I do a computer that I order from your company,
right,
right? So like something's got to really change. But for me, I boiled it down to the reason that we had a lot of these service costs, if you will. By that I mean humans doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, was really boiled down to one thing, and it really was a lack of connectivity, which is really kind of funny to think about, because we're selling connectivity as companies. But the actual source of our expense was really because of lack of connectivity. And by lack of connectivity, I mean between the tools that we were using. And so we have a manual process that we have to like carry things through or call somebody to do something.
hmm
And then we also had this lack of connectivity with the partners that we were working with. Because if you think about something like in Ingram Micro or a TD Synnex or a Pax 8, which was your background, a lot of the actual ordering and quoting and pricing and stuff is still done in spreadsheets and PDFs in 2024. It's still being done with those methods. So the source of primarily, I would argue that the source of cost is really is humans. It's all the manual work that we have to do, and I believe that manual work is caused because our stuff's not connected together.
yeah. So how do you do it? I mean, the
Yeah,
fact of the matter is, I always bring up cost because we know that MSPs are cost conscious, and I
yeah,
always say that I always try to explain, hey, let's not be so cost conscious based on just the price. We should be cost conscious based on efficiencies, right?
right,
That's
right,
and
right,
I mean, when I was doing the MSP thing again, part of running my head against the wall was until I figured out, holy crap, if I could just be more efficient, I'm not worried about these costs over here, and I'm not
right,
chasing. Plus, I'm not also in a race to the bottom, always worried about the price when I know I can charge customers for my services better when I'm more
right,
efficient, right?
right.
So,
Yeah,
I get that part of it. I always point to that first though to see where it's going from a standpoint of price, and you actually started to steer it towards more of, hey, what about these efficiencies, right? So how
yeah,
do you do it? How do you take MSP like myself with all those tools,
yep,
and what
yep.
are you going to do? How are you going to take me from I'm frustrated, I'm freaking out to this streamlined process that you're talking about?
Well, the first thing we did, so I think there's kind of two parts to it. So the first thing is you're asking a little bit about the product and how do we do it, and
Yeah.
the answer first is if you look at a lot of the systems that have been in the world for a long time, and they're very, very valuable. I'm not disparaging those. Like ConnectWise, Autotask, those systems are very, very valuable, still necessary in the world today. And we're not pitching like replacing those. RMM and ITSM software, 100% necessary. And there's some really modern versions of that, like SuperOps and Ninja One, and a lot of these Atera and all these like really cool, like modern kind of RMM platforms. Very, very necessary, very, very cool. But what we did when we built our platform is we said, the first problem that we have to solve is we need to build a stack that's API first. And we need to figure out, how do we digitally connect all the partners that we're working with and all the apps, in other words, tools that we're using as, MSPs and also VARs. And I lump everybody in kind of the same kind of category. And that was actually what we had to solve first. And by the way, that was a multi-year pain in the ass process,
Right.
because we had to build some inroads, and a lot of the apps, we had to build inroads or connectivity to things that people are already used to. Like, you can go to Pax8, and Pax8 did a great job with API first. They were one of the great digital distributors that did all that, and that. And then Ingram and TD Syncs, a lot of the other ones, they've done that too. So they're kind of really catching up on that, and offering some really cool things we can integrate with. And so that gets you integration with partners. And then we had to integrate with essentially all the tools. And so the first problem we had to solve is, how do we tie this like fragmented market together? And then if you're thinking about your, as the TSP or the MSP, what you're doing, if you think about your workflows, like if you just took put it all on a whiteboard, and you would say, well, what are the things that I'm doing? Well, I have to sell, pretty important. Perhaps the most important is I have to be able to sell stuff.
Right.
Then I have to be able to fulfill things. I have to be able to order it after I install it. I have to be able to put the equipment in buildings, all that kind of stuff. Then I have to be able to manage that. And then I have to be able to finance my business or fund all that growth and things like that. And those are the four major workflows that we really honed in on, because we said we have to build an all digital workflow. So back to my original premise of, hey, we want to build the AWS of networking. If you go back to Jeff Bezos in the early 2000s, he put a directive out of his company, and he said, we're going to be API first on everything. And if you're not API first on everything, and this is inside Amazon, you won't work here anymore.
Right.
We kind of said, well, if the industry really should function that way, somebody's going to have to build this connective tissue to tie all these things together. And so that's really what we did first. And then the second part, which answers your pricing and question, is then what we started to do is we started to take these workflows and we started to just build them and think about, how could we build this in a digital way? So instead of calling the distributor and asking where my shit is, which is what everybody does, could we just put that in an interface, pull in real-time pricing and availability, so that the service provider or the VAR or the MSP could just know all the time where the stuff is? And then could they pass that information on to their customers, so their customer knows where all their stuff is, right? These are all things that we have when we order pizza and toilet paper. And I believe that customers are demanding that, or should be demanding that, from, MSPs and VARs.
Okay. So I get that. I get that part of it. And obviously there's the quoting tools of the world that say they do that partially, right? That have that included, but I know how well or not that works for the most part.
Yeah,
How are you differentiating yourselves, and to know that
sure.
that data that you're getting is
Yeah,
factual and
yeah.
real time, right? And is that the only thing? Because we talked about all the tools, and now we're talking about just orders from a disty. So how does that go a little bit deeper? And
Yeah.
where do you differentiate yourself on this real time data?
Well, we do have, so back to your question about how do you justify the price for a software and things like that. So the big thing that we do is we do CPQ, the configure price quote process. And we debated that because we had used everything in the industry. So we tried to build a big CPQ system on top of Salesforce, and we found that Salesforce is really good at product only. But problem is, we're not selling product only. We're doing
Right.
services statements, so we're not. And then we used, ConnectWise CPQ, and that's actually really good at services and statements of work. And some of the other vendors are as well. But the problem is, in today's world, what you're really selling, and this is going to be a topic we can talk about if you want. I believe that the way the industry is evolving is it's evolving towards solutions. When I had my company, we had started the company and we were selling innovative Wi-Fi and, access points with 4 MIMO streams and like
Right.
all these technical things. And then what happened over time is customers were like, yeah, no shit, I need my network to work. I just expect it to work. It wasn't a luxury anymore. It was a utility. It was the network needs to work in my building. And so I'd get copied on emails where our sales team was going into a CIO of a company and talking to them about the access points. And the CIO would respond back and say, hey, dude, I just want my apps to work in my warehouse. Can you do that? Like,
Right.
can you bill me monthly and just make my shit work? Is what they were basically saying. And I think that's the world we're in. And if that's the world we're in, then we've got to package all of these things together. I've got to take hardware licensing. I've got to take apps. I've got to take managed services. I've got to take installation and field services and put it all together. And I've got to bill that essentially in one bill to my customer. And what we found is that there's really nothing in the industry that did that the way we thought. So we built the CPQ as like the core kind of starting workflow on our software.
Okay. So it does do everything, all of that in one
Yeah.
place.
And you were asking about like differentiation. And I think it's really important is for people to wrap their mind around where the world is going, right? So if you look at like if you go to like 100 MSPs or 100 VAR websites, and you first start with the problem of, okay, I'm a customer and I want to buy from this company. Can they do business with the company online? Can they? And you can
Right.
go to the thing that's really shocking is you can go to MSPs or VARs. I say VARs with MSPs because there's a lot of billion-dollar VARs out there with $100 million MSP businesses that the industry doesn't categorize as an MSP, but they've got a $100 million MSP business, right?
Right.
And you go to their websites and you can't buy from them online. Matter of fact, their portal, if you will, is basically service tickets. And I just believe that that's not what the customer wants. I believe the customer wants to do business with you. I believe that they want this modern kind of experience. And the only way to do that is to fix that infrastructure layer that's really running that service provider.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, look, the old guys like us are shifting upward and outward, and the younger generation is coming in, and all they know is that. All they know is I'm gonna, I can go out and press a button and get what I need. And you're right,
Yes.
technology is not there yet. Is not in that place. You can't go and do that. So I definitely see that happening. I'm a little weary of it all working, right, and it all coming together because we've just never seen it happen, right? We I know exactly what you're talking about, and I love that you were banging your head against the wall trying to get to this point. So this is
Well,
really
I,
cool.
I,
This is
I
really
would
cool
argue
stuff.
that, yeah, I would argue that we are seeing it happen, but we're seeing it happen at AWS. So if you look at AWS and Azure and you know the history of them, and there's no like book on AWS, you have to kind of like read a bunch of different things, put it together.
Right.
But if you know like the history and the story behind it, they were running data centers inside, Amazon, and they decided to build this business kind of operating system on top of it because they wanted to account for it internally, which is the advantage of having an anal retentive CEO is they wanted to allocate costs for everything. And so what it forced them to do is take a resource like a data center and then slice it up into individual components or bundles, if you will, or service offerings. And that's where the idea behind compute and storage and things like that, came from. And that is what became AWS. They just made that available outside AWS. So if you think about that from a just like an architecture perspective, they had a service delivery layer, that's the data center where everything happens. They had a business operating system layer, which is where everything happens. It's a catalog, it's metering systems, it's bundles. And then on top of that, they build a customer experience layer. And that's what we see with AWS Customer Console and Azure Customer Portal and those types of things. I believe every MSP and every VAR will have to do that with whatever it is that they sell. And so if they're selling networks, they're going to have to live up to that standard where the customer can come to their site. They can say, I have a 100,000 square foot building. And the MSP needs to say that's going to be $10,000 a month or whatever the pricing is based on the options the customer wants. And the customer needs to be able to buy that and check out on their website. I believe that's the future. That's what customers expect.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. And I do believe that you're right. From an from an Amazon AWS standpoint, they're doing it a certain way. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is it's not there yet for what you're talking about, unless Techgrid is this answer, right? That's where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, it's a great direction because it's true. It is a place where they're going to want to do that. And I will say there are businesses working on this similar idea, right? Trying to make it like this way. And I agree with you. You should be able to go to a website and these are my business concerns. Here's the business solution. Boom. And I want to be able to click it, right? I mean, sure, are there more complex things to deal with in our world? Yes. But for the most part, if I'm a business and I'm coming in and saying, "Hey, Phil, I have I have holes or gaps in these
Yeah.
areas. I can't
Yeah.
sleep at night because I'm worried about I turn on the news and someone's talking about cybersecurity every 5 seconds,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
right?
it's huge. Yeah.
Can I find that solution on here? Click a button and have that happen. And by what you're doing, are you doing this and tying this to the MSPs that are using this service and allowing that to happen?
That's exactly what we're doing. So back to the kind of the platform idea is
Yeah,
a lot of people don't understand or don't think about when you book something on OpenTable as an example. The reason why you're able to do that is because OpenTable actually provides a table management software to the restaurants. That's what digitizes the table, and then you and I can go and we can book things, online, whatever. And that's actually what we set out to do is, and the whole name TechGrid, where it came from, is that, when we started selling networks, people were scared of them. And then over time, they expected them. Like it's a utility. Like, you don't like, it's not optional if you have Wi-Fi anymore. Like used to be an amenity. It's not like that. It's
right.
expected. Now we complain when our Wi-Fi on the plane doesn't work.
True. I just
So it's
did last
like,
week.
exactly. Well, my kids, I have young children. I don't know how old your kids are, but my kids, they complain when the Wi-Fi in the car doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, kids, I used to count trees when I was.
Let me show you what a handshake sounds like.
That's right. It's just so funny how the world is now.
Right.
I have my youngest is almost 3, and he's already trying to talk to Alexa, and tell Alexa to play music. I'm like, the world is just so different than cassette tapes, which is when I was a kid.
Right. Right.
Oh
No,
man.
I get it. And it's moving faster now, right? It's changing, it's evolving much faster with everything that's going on. So I love the idea behind this. I really do. And I'd love to, what are some what are I don't know. I was trying to think of some questions from a standpoint of the platform because of
Yeah.
I've not used it. Clearly, it's
Yeah.
newer,
Yeah.
and I'm on
Yeah.
the other side of this fence. But you know, what's some of the pushback that you've gotten with this from MSPs that are talking to you about this? What's the biggest pushback item that you get from them that you've overcome?
All right, so all right, so I have a bunch of funny stories that we could talk about. At least I think they're funny. The first is that almost everyone in the industry is dealing with almost the exact same set of problems. And you go into like one company that does $100 million a year, and then you go to a company that's 1.7 billion or whatever a year, and then you actually come back and it's the almost the exact same problems, and it comes back to this lack of connectivity between systems. And I just find that as such a funny thing because we are literally selling connectivity as an industry, and so you're dealing with companies that are that are selling the majority of technology to the world, and then their internal systems literally are just not digitally connected. So we're seeing that kind of across the board. But I actually think that the biggest problem that we have, and it's not a problem, but the biggest thing we have to address is people get used to operating in a certain mindset or doing something. And so you're used to a workflow, and even if that workflow might be, dumb, that's the way we've always done things. And so you'll always have people inside companies that maybe their job or their comfort level is because they know something about this tool that's complicated, that nobody else knows. And so they have value, and their personal value is tied up in this, 20-year-old piece of software.
Right.
This ERP that they built, Frankenstein-ish, their value is in that, and their job is kind of tied to that. And you're going in and saying, yeah, this is really complicated. You just don't need that anymore. We're just going to digitize it and do it this way. Yeah, that's the challenge because you're changing things. And so we definitely run into that where there's always somebody inside the company that doesn't want to change something. And so you really have to go to the CEO and say, how long does it take you to turn around quotes? Okay, 2 weeks on a network as a service quote. Well, if you do that in a couple of hours, what does that do to your turnaround time? How many more deals can you close because of speed? What do you save in operating costs because you're spending $3 million to run your pre-sales help desk, and we could cut that by 30 or 40%? What is that? So we have to calculate all those things for them just to drive kind of that motivation. But I think kind of where the industry's headed, and you were hitting on this earlier, is that if you look at our customers, and that's really what matters, the businesses that are buying from VARs and MSPs, they're demanding it. So, you're kind of like, you've got to do these things. Like you're just not going to survive. I
Right.
mean, if you think about how now that I've used Uber, like I'm not going to call a taxi cab company anymore. Like, am I going to call a restaurant instead of booking them through an app on my phone? Hell no, I'm not going to do it. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think once the cat's out of the bag, and I think it already is, I think customers, when they have that experience, they're never going to go back to the old manual email way.
So from a standpoint of, we're a very uh well, we are aware. I would say we are and we're not, but we're a very touchy feely, when it comes to communication, when it comes to, I'm a big believer in, understanding your customers and understanding what their needs are and understanding what they want and really diving into that. I'm all about relationships. Being a community guy, that's my jam. The relationships. I understand people. And some of this is counterintuitive to those relationships because there's less chatting and there's more of the, hey, this is what I want and I'm going to push a button and make it happen. So from your experience with this,
Yeah. Yeah.
what happens when that part of it still needs to happen, because we still have to be, my whole goal is to stop talking about sales at all for what we do as an
Yeah.
industry and start talking about being more prescriptive because we are like doctors. We know what's wrong with these networks. We know what they need. We have scans that do all that work, and then we can come back to them and say, here's your medicine. This is what you need. And so, how does this help with that? Have you seen pushback in between where hey, we need to know a little bit more about your network or a little bit more about what's going on in your business?
Yeah. Well, no, I think you should do that. This doesn't our platform would never replace that. It actually would
Right.
just give you more time to do that. So if you look at like the average order and the amount of time it takes just to generate a quote and then order it and stuff like that, and a lot of those orders are just what you sold them the last time. I've sold them 1,000 of these and I need to sell them 1,000 more. There's no consulting work or
Yeah. Right.
relationship building associated with things like that. But if you look at like the average salesperson and solution engineer and you say, what do they spend their time doing? And you looked at it, it's actually not relationship building. That's what you want them to do. It's actually manual stupid shit that they're doing because they're filling out a non-standard pricing form from a manufacturer. They're doing some sort of deal registration process that really should be online. They're calling and negotiating something, with the partners and things like that. And those are a lot of those types of things that can be done online. One of the companies that we're onboarding into the software, when I met with their CEO and I met with their head of finance, I started asking questions like, well, how are you fulfilling orders? Because you do tens of millions of dollars with Ingram, you do tens of millions of dollars with TD SYNNEX every year. And they said, well, we're emailing PDFs. We're sending them purchase orders. And I was like, well, how are you sending purchase orders? Like, well, we're emailing them with PDF. And I was like, well, how do you know where your equipment is? Well, we call, we log in, it's just like, if you think about that, like today, you're like, that just shouldn't be that way. Last year at the Ingram Micro Conference, Paul Bay, the CEO, stood up and he said that Ingram received 2.4 million calls that year from VARs and MSPs asking where is their stuff. And I'm like, this is unbelievable.
Right.
Like, this is what we're spending our time doing. What we should be doing is, taking our customers out to lunch and drinks and things like that. And what we're not doing is, what we should not be doing is all this like manual labor.
Right. It's very interesting. I'm kind of mad because you should have had this a few years ago when I was, why now? No, I get it. It's definitely interesting. And so no, what is your target? Are you guys helping any and all MSPs? Is there a
Yeah.
certain specific size of MSP? What's been working for you guys?
Well, a couple of things. So we were in stealth mode for a couple of years while we were building the platform, and we really were in stealth mode because we were bootstrapping the whole thing. So I sold the MSP business and reinvested all the money in building the platform because I thought there was such a big need for it. And then last year, I met Arnie Bellini. Do you know if you had
I know,
Arnie on the
yes.
show? Yeah.
Arnie actually way back in the day was my sales rep at ConnectWise. That's how long I've been doing this.
Oh my gosh, Arnie Bellini.
Arnie Bellini, yes, sir. He was
So
he was feet on the ground back then when ConnectWise was just starting out, and we were drinking the Kool-Aid early.
Wow. So I met Arnie about a year ago. Actually not even quite that long. And he's the major he's on the board at Techgrid.
Yeah,
And as you know, he sold ConnectWise back in 2019 and then left the industry, went on, did whatever people that have that kind of money do for 5 years. And then he came back in. And when he and I met last year, it was towards the end of last year, he was saying, hey, there really hasn't been a tremendous amount of innovation. And he didn't mean that as a dig on other RMM because there has been innovation in, Ninja One and things like, and there's a lot of those RMM companies out there that have done really well. But really what he's talking about is, the average MSP has 35 to 40 tools that they use. And
yeah,
it's becoming more and more fragmented over time. And really what needs to happen is it needs to become more and more integrated over time. And you've got all these problems because we have this lack of connectivity from all these different tools and things like that. So we really hit it off, right away, and we ended up taking investment from, Arnie, and now we're, really scaling the company. But one sort of the things that surprised me back to the, who was our product for question is we thought it was going to be more for the small to medium MSP, maybe up to $50 million or so in revenue because we assumed that the large guys would have it all figured out. And what we found out is that that's absolutely not true. Actually, the reverse is probably true because if you have 100 sales reps, your problems are magnified by 100.
yeah.
Whereas if I
Right,
have
right.
five, it's like, I could probably do these manual things and live with it for a while.
Yep, you're 100%. Sorry, I just want to get rid of that ding that was just happening.
Okay, okay.
I don't know if you heard it, but there's a little ding. I said, "Oh, I must have missed one." No, and that's great. And listen, when you have Arnie behind you, that's a big boost too, because that's the other question that happens. Everybody's panicked right now, MSPs especially. And then someone came to me and said, "Hey, Ken, why does it take so long for MSPs to jump on board with a new solution?" And I'm like, "You're kidding, right?" Like, let's think about what's happened to MSPs over the last few years. First, it was, and it's always been, vendors beating down their doors, talking about how great they are, and not actually asking them what they want, and never talking
Right,
to them, but talking at them. And you and I can both commiserate, right? It's
right,
horrible. So you have that.
right,
That's just the general thing that vendors, for some reason, haven't learned how to talk to MSPs. They're getting better, but most vendors just don't get that part. Then you have how time consuming it is when you're an MSP And we all have the shiny toy syndrome, right? We bring our toys back, we dump them on the desk of our tech people and say, "Hey guys, I was at a show, figure this shit out," and then none of it gets implemented properly. There was never a plan initially, and then
Right.
we said, "Okay, we're going to have a plan for this, and we're going to stop doing the shiny toy syndrome." But now they find a vendor, they find a solution, they love the solution. It takes 90 days to ramp it up. You get all buy-in from everybody in your company, and then you put it in place, and they get bought by a company that completely destroys it. That's what MSPs are worried about right now. And it's
Right.
happening so fast and so furious. Oh, I went from this company to that company, and then, oh, by the way, they got bought by the company you were leaving, right? And so that is causing this gap in how quickly they can make decisions. And so
Right.
from a vendor perspective,
Yeah.
I'll say this, I know a lot of people have my back on this. If you're a vendor and you're trying to build a community, it takes 36 to 48 months to do. And that's a big part of the reason, because they're waiting to figure out where that trust level can be, where they're going to say, "Okay, I like you, I like your solution, it looks like it works, my people like it, but now the next question is, who backs you?" And what's your longevity in the space, right?
Right. Right.
So it's good to have that piece of it, because with that, you're not looking to go out right away and have that happen. And maybe obviously everybody has a number, but at least when you have solid backing, that changes that.
Yeah, Arnie gives us a lot of different things. I mean, obviously Arnie is, I don't know if you've spent time with him, like he's just a visionary guy. And he's also just amazingly active. And I mean that in the community, but also mean that like physically. Last week I was on a call with him and he was training for a triathlon and all that stuff. He's like I'm like, this guy just has unlimited amount of energy. Like, so I hope I have that in 20 years, like he's just because that man is just he's going at it. But he what he does bring us as well is he brings us a little bit of credibility because he's done it before and he really did build, Arnie was really the pioneer in the industry. He built an MSP in the 80s that became ConnectWise, and then he scaled ConnectWise to 21,000 MSPs, before it was acquired. So he really is one of the, if not the pioneer of the industry, I would say.
Yeah, except for MSP, that term has just killed me, because it's really hilarious how we've done this. And you know anybody can hang a shingle and call themselves an MSP. So what does that mean? What does it mean? Oh,
Right.
MSPs are our target. Well, that doesn't really explain anything, because the term MSP has gone completely flat. It means anybody who touches IT. Well, then it doesn't mean anything. And I think we have to
Right.
get to that level where we can start saying, what opportunity, where's your OML, right? Where's your maturity level, operational maturity level at? And then that can be your ranking or your gauge of what level MSP you really are, so that we know how to assess that and how to work with each one of those. Because that's really what's gone crazy with the trade. It's just like, you know, cloud's been around for 20 some odd years. We all know, you dealt with it, I dealt with it. It just had a
Yeah.
different name until somebody found cloud sexy. Now, cloud
Right.
is this new cool thing. It's like, no, no, no. It's the same
Right.
thing. It's still
Right.
somebody's server somewhere else, right?
That's right. That's right.
And we
Used to
had
be
all
data
kinds of,
center. Now it's
yeah,
cloud.
yeah, 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 yeah. And there was so many
Now
.NET
it's cloud with
services.
AI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was .NET services. There was so many different things that I remember even Microsoft trying to find a way to, a term to call it.
You
But I
mentioned that
really love this.
MSPs.
What's
Oh, I'm
that?
sorry. Go ahead.
No,
You
no, go
mentioned that
ahead.
MSPs were scared, or you said that they are. Can you unpack that a little bit? What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I was pretty. I unpacked it in the sense that it's harder for them to make a decision. I wouldn't say scared. I would just say they're a little more tentative, because of the fact
Got
um,
it.
that they've been burned so many times. And how many
Right.
times can you be burned before And listen, like, again, just like the OML, the level for each one of these MSPs. Some MSPs are going to go out to social and go crazy talking about how shitty the vendor space is and all this other stuff. Other MSPs are willing to help, but they're not finding it, right. They're not finding vendors to kind of play along and help with that. A lot of the vendors are doing, partner, the packs, and starting to do things like that. And hopefully they're listening to these MSPs? Because we do have a better, I will say, we have a better, or I want to say better. It seems like we have a larger group of MSPs with a thirst to fix things and make things right than
I
we
sure
did
hope
back in the
so.
day.
Yeah.
I think that we do have more of that now. They're all joining packs, and they're not just joining packs to say, "Oh yeah, I know those guys. I'm on their advisory council." They're actually bringing forward things that need to be fixed, and the vendors are actually listening, which makes those packs that much more valuable. So I do believe all that's happening, but
Right.
there's still this major gap in trust. Can we trust this? Is it going to do what we need it to do? And it's just taking them longer to make those decisions because they've been burned so many times, right? And if you want to put a finger on the pulse of it, it's harder because, like I said, some of them are just like, screw everybody. They go to, they go to social. And then we have some more advanced folks that are like, hey, listen, I'm going to give this a chance. I'm going to give, this next change a try. And I'm going to, I'm willing to work with it. But they're still going to take a few extra steps because of how many times the industry has just burned them.
Right.
And like I said, we have come a long way. I think that we have our, for the higher level MSPs that are in the space, I think they're even higher than we were back in the day. I think they have
Yeah.
way more knowledge. They have way more, they have a lot more information at their fingertips, of course, right? There's so many ways that you brought up AI. AI is like a holy crap moment. Like, you just think about what AI could have did for us back in the day, right? It's amazing how far we've come from that standpoint. So there's hope, but I think we need to have more of a draw on, hey, there are trustworthy vendors in the space. They're trying to make things better and trying to gain that focus. And I like what you're bringing to the table here. I want to see more of it. I'd like to see you guys start to come out of that stealth mode and start to be able to get out and show more of this. So I'm glad you guys are jumping on this show to do that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully spread the word and get that out there. And where what's next for you guys? Like, what are you going to be doing to get out there and
Yeah.
show more of this? Because people, that's the next question is, I need to see it. Let me see. I want to
Yeah.
see the platform. I want to see what it looks like.
Well, we're showing up at a lot of these shows now. So we've never left the shows because we were on the advisory council with HPE for 15 years.
Right.
But so we're going back to those shows. And now we're going in as sponsors, which is really odd for us. Feels funny because we were on the advisory council a lot. So no, we're starting to show up at those shows now. So we're there, and obviously techgrid.com. People can go there and find out, about the company and hit us up and request a demo. I think the big thing for people is just getting a demo and understanding like what you can do, and then making a decision on whether it's, the right solution for your company. Because I think a
Right.
lot of people can't even visualize what it's like to have like a connected workflow, like because they've just never seen it. And so they're not accustomed to it. So, and you're talking about AI. AI, I do believe, is going to change our industry, but it will only change our industry when you apply it to digital workflows. You can't, if you take AI as standalone, it's not super useful. I can go to ChatGPT and I could do some really, I could do some things that are really cool. Okay. But if you don't have a digital workflow as an MSP, then there's limited functionality you're going to be able to have. And so what you're seeing with Arnie as an example, is he's investing in a lot of other AI companies that are doing LLMs that are trying to really revolutionize, the MSP business model. And what we're doing is we're looking for ways to apply that inside a digital workflow. So there's a lot of really cool opportunities, I think. And so I think in a year from now, we'll be having some really interesting discussions where you can use AI to do some things that would just blow people away. We're already doing it, but I want to talk about it. So I'll talk about it when we release it. But
Listen, you gotta float the teasers out there, Phil.
I have a problem. I'm the CEO of the company, but I also run product. So I know what we're building, and so I have to keep my mouth shut until it's actually generally available. But there's some great opportunities to apply machine learning and AI and stuff into the business model itself, and I think that'll change kind of the productivity level of the MSP. So,
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, man.
This is all very cool stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of blown away, Phil. You got me in a little bit of a spot because my wheels are already turning about how you can apply this. And
Yeah.
for everybody that's watching this, you're watching the recording, rewind, watch it back, get your brain wrapped around it. I think the first thing to do, and I say this to everybody anyways, is go check it out. See a demo. Like Phil said, Phil didn't say, you got to buy our shit. He said, hey, come check out a demo and see if it works and see if it matches up, and that's how it should be done. But remember, as MSPs out there, if you're not talking to new vendors in the space, or you're not looking at new solutions because you've always been burned, you'll never know if the good ones are here. So whether your stack is perfect, or you think you have it down pat, or you have your systems down pat, nothing's ever perfect. And the way that things are evolving now, I really think that you have to look at new technologies and new solutions. So take some time to check out Techgrid. Go find Phil on LinkedIn. He's a easy find. And well, there's another Phil Wegner. It's not the same guy, so make sure
It's
you
my
just.
cousin.
It's your cousin, really?
My cousin. Yeah. It's a big family. So he's the only other Phil Wegner I know of. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. So make sure it's the one from Techgrid. Connect. And I did it. I connected with him, and he connected with me right away. So he's definitely an.
Yeah.
He lets me in, he'll
Yeah.
let you in.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
an easy person to connect with. But anything coming up that someone might be able to meet you at? Is there an event coming up
So
that you might be
I,
at?
I I know you talked about PAX 8. I will be at the PAX 8 event. So if
Oh,
anybody's going
nice.
to be there, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, and would love to meet people. And then at the HP Discover conference, we'll be a sponsor there, and with the booth and all that kind of stuff set up and doing demos. So yeah, in June we'll be at two shows. So
Nice. You're out there.
yeah,
You're out there. You're gonna get smashed in the face right out of the gate.
that's right.
It's a lot. It's fun. It's fun. I've been doing the community thing forever, so I'm on this circuit. And Phil, by the way, if you ever need anything from a standpoint of shows and things like that you want to chat about, I can
I
definitely
would
give
love
you.
that.
I'll
Yeah.
give you the truth. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a pretty blunt guy, and I will give you the honest truth about each one of them if you want to know.
Are you going to PAX 8? You're going to that conference?
I'm not scheduled to be there right now, but that could change over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see. But it's a great event, and I have nothing but great things to say. PAX 8's been doing it right and for so long, and I was a big part of that early on. So I love what
Yeah.
they're doing, and obviously I'm still cheering for them all. So if I can get there, I'll be there.
Well, I'm going to crash the MSP Initiative event, the block party. Hit it hard. It'll be
Yeah,
fun.
you should definitely talk to them about it. But anyways, Phil, man, this was a great session, man. Lots to talk about, lots to unpack. I think you're doing something different, which I love, because we definitely hear a lot of the same things in the industry. This is something different. So I think you got something good going here. And as long as the demo magic works, I think you're going to have a lot of folks look into this and checking it out. And like I said, if I can help in any way, more than happy to help you out. And say hi to Arnie. He might not remember me since it was so far back in his childhood, I'll say. It was so long
Sounds good.
ago. It was definitely the early days. But again, thanks for coming on the show, Phil. Appreciate it. I'm glad I got to fill in today and meet you. For everybody out there, this show is recorded. As I mentioned in the beginning, you can catch this on MSPI's website, mspinitiative.com. They also have Facebook, LinkedIn. It's everywhere. So you should be able to find them. They have podcasts on YouTube as well. So again, thanks again for another great show, Phil. Thanks for being a great guest, and love to see what you do, and hopefully connect soon, and then also see the progress down the line.
And thank you so much for your time and having me on the show. Hope to see you soon.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.